Coming up on Network Africa. Tanzania holds state funeral for late President John Magufuli. Suspected militants kill at least 40 people in Niger's western Tahua region. Plus, Rwanda confirms presence of UK and South Africa COVID variants in the country. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Akaite Afia. Let's begin with stories and happenings that made headlines over the weekend.
Polls closed in the Congo Republic late on Sunday with the incumbent, Denis Sassou Nguesso, widely expected to extend his 36-year rule despite an economic crisis in the Central African oil-producing nation. The president's main rival, former government minister Guy Brice Parfait-Colélas, was in the hospital preparing to be evacuated to France as voting was going on. In a video message set to be filmed on Friday, Colélas encouraged Congolese to go to the polls and vote.
I am fighting against death, but I ask you to rise up, go and vote for change so that I will not be fighting in vain.
On Monday, his campaign manager announced his death on the plane while leaving for France. There was an internet blackout across the country on Sunday. Results are expected to be published within 4 days. If none of the 7 candidates secures more than 50% of the votes, the second round will take place 15 days later. Mourners lined the streets of Tanzanian capital Dodoma on Sunday to watch the motorcade carrying former President John Pombe Magufuli's coffin after it arrived from Dar es Salaam. Motorbikes raised ahead of the hearse, and some mourners jogged alongside as they paid their respects. A state funeral was held at Dar es Salaam's Uhuru Stadium on Sunday morning. Another service is expected to take place in Dodoma on Monday. Magufuli, one of Africa's most prominent coronavirus skeptics, died aged 61 on Wednesday. He was Tanzania's first president to die in office. Niger's top court on Sunday confirmed Mohamed Bazoum's victory in last month's presidential runoff, allowing the ruling party candidate to be sworn into office next month. Bazoum's inauguration on April the 2nd will mark the West African country's first transfer of power from one democratically elected leader to another. President Muhammadu Yusufu is stepping down after 2 5-year terms. The Constitutional Court credited Bazoum, a former interior minister, with 55.66% of the votes, ahead of former President Mahama Usman, who had 44.34%.
A state funeral is being held in Tanzania's capital, Dodoma, for former President John Magufuli. Several African heads of state have arrived for the event, including presidents of Kenya, South Africa, Zimbabwe, Comoros, Mozambique, Zambia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Mr. Magufuli died last Wednesday from what authorities said were heart-related complications. Today is a public holiday in Tanzania as the country enters a 3rd day of bidding farewell to the late Magufuli.
Family of nations of Africa are today mourning the passing of their own, an esteemed leader of his people, and a tireless champion of the cause of African progress.
One of the main contenders in Congo-Brazzaville's presidential race, Guy Brice Parfait-Colélas, has died after becoming seriously ill with COVID-19. His campaign director says that Mr. Colélas, quote, died in the medical aircraft which came to get him from Brazzaville on Sunday afternoon. The 61-year-old tested positive for coronavirus on Friday, the last day of election campaigns. He was diabetic and was one of 6 candidates running against 77-year-old President Sassou Nguesso. A day before the election, Mr. Colélas was filmed looking weak and wearing an oxygen mask, but encouraging voters to go cast their ballots. He was the son of a former minister and previously held the position of Minister of Fishing and Civil Servants. The UN, US, Canada, Africa Union, and several European nations have called for Somalia's political leaders to show leadership by reaching an agreement on elections that were delayed due to squabbling over the voting process. In a joint statement, the world powers warned that they, quote, will not support a partial or parallel electoral process or any initiatives leading to extension of prior mandates. They urged Somali leaders to reach a deal on peaceful, inclusive, free, fair, and credible elections at the earliest possible time. Their call came ahead of talks between the federal government and Somalia's semi-autonomous regions at Mogadishu airport. Somalia's main foreign backers say the talks should build on a September 17, 2020 electoral framework under which clan elders would select delegates to electoral colleges, which in turn would choose federal lawmakers who then pick a president. At least 40 people have died in suspected militant attacks in Niger's western Tahua region, just hours after the Constitutional Court validated the election of Mohamed Bazoum as president. Outgoing President Mahamadou Issoufou termed the incident barbaric as he sent condolences to the affected communities in Talia. The attackers are said to have targeted 4 villages near the Malian border. Militants linked to the Islamic State in the Greater Sahara usually operate in the area. Incoming President Mohamed Bazoum is under pressure to address rising civilian killings in the volatile western Tahua and Tillaberi regions and the southeastern Difa region in attacks perpetuated by militants from the Islamic State, Al-Qaeda's Sahel group, and Nigeria's Boko Haram group. Well, let's get more on this story from security analyst Chidi Nwanu. Chidi, thanks for joining us on the program. So, what do you make of the rising militant attacks in Niger Republic?
Well, it's an interesting kind of dichotomy in that whilst you're having these attacks in Niger, you're also having not simultaneous, but almost at the same time attacks going on in Mali. These two regions adjacent to each other, the Gao region in Mali and Tillaberi in Niger, are kind of a hotbed of insurgency. But, you know, not only do you have a crossover of different ethnic groups and different peoples, you've obviously got different jihadi groups, different criminal groups crossing in between. So when you look at it in the general context, rather than looking at it in the isolated context of Niger or the isolated context of Mali, if you look at it in the generality, these are just these groups taking advantage of the dry season, taking advantage of the opened transit routes to conduct attacks and put pressure on the local governments.
Well, as you did mention, the country is facing attacks from Islamic State in the Greater Sahara, Al-Qaeda's Sahel group, and Nigeria's Boko Haram group. So how can the government and the country's military effectively tackle this crisis?
It's militarily, it's a very difficult thing to tackle because you're dealing with people who are amorphous, and these are not fixed armies, you know, with lines in the desert that you can go and bomb or you can go and attack. You know, these are small groups hiding within the population. So, you know, one of the key things I always emphasize is it comes down to the basic governance. The military elements of this are, you need to find these people first to fix them and kill them, and the way that you do, or capture them, and the way you do that is through good governance, through just, you know, providing the basics, you know, an effective police force in every, you know, in every town or in every village, registering people's births, deaths, knowing people's IDs, and then providing basic services and providing, most importantly, a source of redress for people. So abuses by the government or abuses by their fellow citizens, if citizens can find a way to get some sort of redress, then they're less likely to turn to arms or, you know, give succor to jihadis or to bandits.
Well, Chidi, one last question here, but would it be wise to take a regional approach in tackling this crisis?
Short answer, yes. The longer answer is that has to happen. I mean, it's technically kind of happening in various ways. So you've got the G5 Sahel, you've got you know, the LCBC, the Lake Chad Basin, MNJTF situation, but these are not linked. These are not integrated. These are generally built around single solid countries. So, for example, G5 Sahel is built around France. MNJTF is nominally built around Nigeria. It needs to be a cohesive, you know, link all the way from Nigeria, from Chad or Nigeria down to Mauritania. A comprehensive link, not just of governance, transports, the economy, military, law enforcement. Bring it all together, and that's the only way this situation is going to be tackled.
All right. Well, Chidi, thank you so much for joining us and giving further clarity on that situation there.
Thanks for having me.
Rwanda has confirmed the presence of new variants of COVID-19 virus first identified in the UK and South Africa. Health Minister Daniel Ngamije says that 10 cases of the South African variant and 2 of the UK variant were identified last week. The variants were found in 400 samples, quote, that they were able to sequence between October 2020 and February 2021. Dr. Ngamije adds that the variants were identified among travelers who arrived at the country's Kigali International Airport. They were put in isolation until they tested negative. In January, the UK added Rwanda on its travel ban list for fear of the South African variant. Mauritius has started using the Indian-made Covaxin vaccine after running out of its 100,000 doses of Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. The Covaxin vaccine, produced by India's Bharat Biotech company, has not been approved by the World Health Organization. But a Mauritian top official defends its use, saying India had formally approved its emergency use. Dr. Zubair Jumaye, a senior advisor to the Mauritius Prime Minister, says, quote, "It is a safe vaccine. Covaxin has demonstrated 81% interim efficacy in preventing COVID-19. But opposition leader MP Shakil Mohammed raised concerns about the government's vaccination campaign. He questioned why AstraZeneca was administered for the Prime Minister and Covaxin is being used for others. The World Bank Group Global Director of Health, Nutrition and Population, Mohamed Ali Pateh, says the delivery of COVID-19 vaccines to developing countries is offering a light at the end of the long tunnel of the pandemic, and also unprecedented manner as well. Mr. Pateh notes that over the last couple of months, the bank, together with WHO, UNICEF, Gavi, and the Global Fund, has focused on an effort to help countries get ready to deploy the vaccines.
Over the last couple of weeks, I think it's good to see that vaccines are now being delivered to several developing countries over the last couple of weeks. I think that's offering a light at the end of the long tunnel of the pandemic. And this is happening in an unprecedented manner as well. So the global cooperation around development of vaccines and deployment of vaccines, I think, has worked. And I think the bank has also contributed tremendously in helping its clients get ready over the time that is ahead of us to ensure that people are not left behind. So over the last couple of months, I think we've focused as the World Bank, together with WHO, UNICEF, Gavi, Global Fund, on an effort to help countries get ready to deploy the vaccines, to understand where they are, to assess their readiness to be able to deploy those vaccines efficiently, effectively, as well as equitably. Based on that assessment, over the last couple of months, across more than 128 countries, we know that many countries are ready in terms of the coordination and management of the deployment, in terms of even some of the cold chain infrastructure, the financing, the regulatory bit. But there are some gaps.
Still to come on the program. Mauritania and Qatar resumed diplomatic ties after a 4-year. Thanks for staying with us. Mauritania has resumed diplomatic relations with Qatar after a 4-year freeze. Foreign ministers from both countries held talks in Doha, Qatar on Sunday on the resumption of ties. The West African country cut links with Qatar in 2017 over allegations that it supported terrorists, following the lead of other Arab powers, including Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and the United Arab Emirates, that had done the same. The quartet accused Doha of, among other things, supporting terrorist groups and being too close to Iran, allegations Qatar has consistently denied. A lot more needs to be done to respond to the very specific needs of victims of sexual exploitation or abuse by UN personnel. Now, that's according to UN rights advocate Jane Connors, who made this known while briefing reporters on the Secretary General's latest report on special measures for protection from sexual abuse. Ms. Connors says the United Nations must encourage reporting of allegations of sexual exploitation and abuse committed by the organization's personnel.
A lot more must be done to respond to the very specific needs of victims of sexual exploitation and or abuse by our personnel. I've continued to focus on the resolution of paternity child support claims. We have a lot of these that are outstanding, and exploring ways to support women to gain access to legal support, including through pro bono lawyers and national human rights institutions. We must encourage reporting of allegations of sexual exploitation and abuse committed by our personnel. We must investigate these in a victim-centred way and make sure that perpetrators are held to account through our administrative processes and by cooperating with member states through theirs to receive justice and possible redress. We must support them to receive practical assistance, medical care, legal representation, skills training or other help. This enables them to rebuild their lives and move beyond any stigma they might experience from being a victim.
United Nations Under Secretary General and Executive Director of UNFPA, Dr. Natalia Kanem, has ended a 5-day mission to Sudan, where she congratulated the transitional government and the people for the democratic transition underway in the country and the progress that is being made. The United Nations supports the country of Sudan to improve laws and systems for the people of Sudan. UNFPA in particular supports the rights, safety, and dignity of women and girls and equal opportunity for all.
We are at the end of a fantastic day with the communities of Blue Nile State. Walking into a community which was under tents, I met Aziza. She is an educated village woman, displaced from her original community but making her home in Shanisha. And her dream and her passion is to be a kindergarten teacher. I also met with very empowered women of this rural community. And what really struck me was they've organized themselves to manage money so that they can give transport to pregnant women. Any woman who is in danger of losing her life during childbirth can be funded to come to the community clinic. And the hospital that I visited was a great example of how UNFPA preserves life, even when a cesarean section is needed under difficult circumstances. But my favorite part of the day was handing over the keys to a tricycle ambulance, which we call tuk-tuk here in Sudan. And to hand the keys to an empowered woman of that community was a thrill. To see the chiefs, the young children, the midwives, and all of the UNFPA personnel standing side by side to assure that we reach SDG 3 for health. Well, that's why we do this, and it was a wonderful day.
On Friday, South Africa's power utility company, Eskom, announced it's canceling power cuts from Monday. On Wednesday, it escalated load shedding from stage 1 to stage 2 this week, and this is expected to last until Saturday. The utility had reduced the stage from 2 to 1 due to improvements to the power grid, but it says there had been further breakdowns at some power stations. While people may begin to breathe a cautious sigh of relief, the worry is that this movement in the uncertainty shows just how deep the problems of Eskom run, and it's taking a toll on business.
First, it was the COVID-19 restrictions, moving from level 5 to 1, back to 3, and then 1 again. This came with costs to livelihoods. Now it's the state-owned power company, Eskom, giving a daily movement of power cuts and load-shedding stages. On Wednesday, Eskom announced an escalation of power cuts from stage 1 to 2 due to further loss of generation capacity at 4 of its power plants. The power utility says 6,052 megawatts is unavailable because of planned maintenance. A further 12,690 megawatts has also been taken off the grid due to breakdown and delays. Small businesses have been the hardest hit. Audrey Koboni, who owns a jewelry shop in Melville, Johannesburg, says this has brought a lot of strain on her business.
We do rely on people going to coffee shops because we are a small retail store. So if there's no power, people don't leave their homes to go to restaurants and stuff like that. So small retails like us tend to lose out on business.
Restaurants, hotels and other food outlets are often being forced to temporarily close for the duration of the power cuts. Amanda Legrini, who owns a restaurant and coffee shop, fears that this could lead to her business shutting down.
For small businesses, the impact is huge. It's unpredictable where we're using fridges. We have to provide that stock doesn't go off. We also have to consider that our team have difficulties getting to work. Taxis are held up because the impact is on the road. The stores are impacted from, anything that is refrigerated, so we have spoilage.
Goods transported across cities also experience heavy delays as trains are brought to a standstill in areas that are experiencing power cuts. However, Eskom Chief Operations Officer Jan Oberholzer says the utility's aging plans have made it necessary to institute power cuts to give room for maintenance.
If you take some of these units off, that means although we are tight for supply to meet the demand of the country, so if you take additional units off, additional capacity, that means you have less that is available, and with unreliability and unpredictability of our system, it makes it even more challenging. This capacity that is actually needed to supply in the demand, I believe that we have done actually quite well.
The recent announcement by the National Energy Regulator of South Africa, NERSA, saying that the High Court of South Africa, Gauteng Division, has ordered that an amount of 10 billion rand be added to Eskom's allowable revenue is also likely to add to the electricity woes of businesses and residents. Energy expert Feriel Adams says these tariff increases expected in the 2021-2022 financial year will lead to a rise in cost of goods and services.
So we need to find a way that, to solve that problem. And the challenge, though, is that you can't just keep increasing the price of electricity. Because if you look at the reports that came out previously, if you look at the amount of money that Eskom has a shortfall of, you have to increase almost 20 to 25% a year for the next 5 years, which is really not quite, it's not affordable to the ordinary person on the street.
Eskom says the increases will aid the utility to address revenue shortfalls, recover incurred costs, as well as improving Eskom's financial sustainability. The nation will have some more waiting to do, mostly in the dark, as Mr. De Ruyter says relief may only come by September 2022.
Well, that is all for Network Africa today. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Akaite Afia.